Hello. My name is Steve Lebo. Now I'm in my 18th year at Northern York County Regional Police Department, and I'm currently assigned to the Patrol Division as a corporal. I worked side by side with all of these guys for the entirety of my career and have built a close working relationship with them all. I'd like to take some time to share some personal stories about each of them and describe a few important characteristics about them which made Cody, Mark, and Isaiah exemplary officers within our agency and servants of our community. Mark Baker, the perpetual prankster, people pleaser, and giant teddy bear. I hadn't seen much of you, Bake, since I left criminal investigations and came back to patrol in December of 24. 2 days before that tragic Wednesday, I was happy to run into you in the new headquarters. A simple hello would not do for either of us, and it rarely did when we crossed paths. You and J.C. Asper both emphatically wanted hugs that morning, and hugs we all received. We chatted about computer forensics for a bit, and this would be the last time I would ever see you. You used to make fun of me for looking up and to the right, to think to myself, and often called me a deep thinker. You'd say, "What are you looking at up there?" You even hung a sign in my office that said Steve's Thinking Corner. And you slapped it way up and out of the reach of my hand from your giant 6'5" stature. And I will undoubtedly always see your face in that upper right-hand corner for the rest of my life. You froze my patrol hat. You licked my computer screen. And you even put my personal cell as the call forwarding number for the after-hour phone calls to our police station. Although I'm still not entirely sure you were responsible for this, based on your track record, you took the blame and you will forever be the culprit. There were many mornings I recall storming out of your office, especially before the caffeine set in, with you pleading to my back, "Oh, Steve, come on, I'm only kidding." And I wasn't present for this last prank, but it is well known throughout the folklore and the history books of CID that you were notorious for secretly remapping your partner's keyboard keys. And I don't mean just pulling the keys around, I mean from within the software. So for an example, an A would now be an R, or the space bar would be an enter key. This way you could listen in and laugh at the inevitable cursing and keyboard slamming erupting from across the hall. So enough about the pranks. I want everyone to know about the people-pleasing, always obliging side of you, Bake. You amassed a wealth of knowledge throughout your career based on your own natural curiosity and your drive towards education. As a result, you guarded that knowledge as if it were copywritten material, and rightfully so. You earned it. You were the guru. The unfortunate part was that you were now also the neighborhood IT guy and computer repairman. The phrase, "Have Baker take a look at it," circulated the department airwaves as commonly as, "What's for lunch today?" But you couldn't say no. You humbly took on tasks much faster than you could address them. Lieutenant Migatolsky and I eventually coined this the Baker Special. Mark, I know that the weight of your to-do box wore you down, and I pray now that this burden is off your shoulders. You lighten the mood of serious situations. You ate cold Campbell soup straight from the can, and you knocked the wind out of me from a simple pat on my back. You can never be replaced, Bake, and you will never be forgotten. Isaiah Emenheiser, Izzy, my office neighbor and determined, persistent, hardworking detective. I knew about all of your active cases not only because of our conversations about them, but also because I unavoidably overheard your other conversations through our shared wall. People that know you like us will understand that reference, and I say it out of love for you, buddy. I remember one of the last phone calls that you made to me. We had a department-wide internet outage a few weeks ago, and you heard me on the radio around 9 p.m. We caught up on old times for about 30 minutes while you figured out what to do with the rest of your shift. I also remember your first day in CID, when you told us all that we could share your barbecue sauce in the fridge, but you made sure to remind us that your energy drinks were off limits. I'm going to put one in my fridge for you, brother, and there it will stay. You were my go-to for tips and tricks on home improvement jobs and household repairs. And we'd often trade tools and tips like a barter system. You could have my geofence search warrant templates if I could borrow your laser level and framing square. You'd share advice on drying out my ceiling after the washing machine leaked, and I'd share back my advice on hand mapping cell tower data from AT&T. You gave me a contact number for an electrician, and I gave you a contact number for a Citibank investigator. I never saw you as mad as the day that Joe Jones asked you to repeat a 20-minute story that you had so eloquently told me, only to have Joe stop you after 10 seconds and ask if the story was going to be any longer. Although much busier, you seem much happier as of late. I could certainly tell you found a love for real estate development, and I'm horribly saddened that this dream ended so abruptly. Earlier, I called you determined and persistent, and I want to share a story from your first major case in CID to put context to those descriptors. In 2021, you were investigating a bad guy, a real bad guy, and that should be enough for everyone to understand the nature of this investigation. We did an early morning search warrant at his house, and you later convinced him to come back to the station for an interview. If I recall correctly, the interview started shortly after 9 a.m. We reviewed some line of questioning ideas outside of the interview room before you started, and off you went on your first major interrogation. After about an hour or so, you took a break and stepped out to talk with me. I remember you confidently telling me, "Leibs, I think I'm wearing him down." And I wasn't so sure. But I should have been. You walked back into that interrogation room and you continued with the suspect. Lunchtime came around an hour and a half later, but you didn't join us. You were still hard at work on the guy in the interview room. If anybody knows Isaiah, mealtimes were sacred. I'd often catch you staring at my lunch, and I'd ask you back, "What's the problem?" You would tell me that the food I was eating had no caloric value. So now after lunch that day, we're about the 3-hour mark into your interview. Lieutenant Migatolsky pulled me aside and we agreed, if he's not out of there in 5 to 10 minutes, we're going to pull him out. Sure enough, your persistence and determination paid off. It was in that next 5 to 10 minutes that you obtained his confession and served justice to a family that desperately needed your help. Izzy, you were a strong presence in the office, and you were passionate and driven to anything you set your mind on doing. You weren't afraid to ask for help, even though you made me get up and walk to your office when you asked for it. The quiet of your loss, my friend, is deafening. I will miss you dearly. Cody Becker, Corey Booker, or any of the other nicknames we shared in the past. The first time I ever met you was a midnight shift almost 18 years ago. I was on the roadside with my red and blue lights on dealing with an injured deer on Lincoln Highway out in Paradise Township. You pulled up in your sky blue Chevy Blazer and you hopped out to talk. You said, "I'm Cody Becker. I'm headed to the police academy soon and I want to work with Northern Regional. Can I have that deer?" So, I said, "Be my guest, Cody." While you pulled away into the night, I remember asking myself, who was that kid? And 18 years later, I found that answer to that question, and you've become my best buddy. I'm not from York County originally, so over the years, I've met many new people in York, whether through police work, community friends, or through athletics and coaching. A large portion of them ask if I know Cody Becker, when they find out where I work. You made a big impact on this community in many ways, and your legacy will be a lasting example of dedication, loyalty, leadership, and pride. Our careers started in much the same fashion. It was only about a year after I started with Northern Regional that you were hired. We worked side by side on evening shifts and eventually midnights. Soon enough, we got to an experience level where we could start testing for promotions. You took studying and preparation very seriously. At that point in my life, I did not. I watched you as you were promoted to corporal and eventually sergeant. Now, more than anything or anyone else, it was your success, your leadership qualities, your commitment to police work, and your loyalty to our men and women at Northern Regional that motivated me to get serious about my career and strive for accomplishments of my own. I coach youth wrestling, and Cody and I built a strong bond through our wrestling backgrounds. We'd often talk about the weekend matches when we'd get back to work on a Monday, and we toss around ideas on how to teach the young wrestlers some of the technique that we observed. If you know wrestling, though, and especially Cody, words just won't do when discussing wrestling technique. He'd often cut me off half-sentence and say, "Here, turn around." And I'd suddenly be in an armbar or underneath a sprawl in the middle of the patrol room, full uniform and all. I'm fairly sure there was at least one occasion where Chief Flash walked in on such a moment, and you can only imagine his reaction on what he was witnessing. Last Tuesday, we actually chatted about wrestling in the parking lot. I remember the joy in your face when you talked about your son being able to sign up for the Papertown Pinners, even though he's practicing on that section of orange and black Central York mat I gave you for your basement. I promise I won't tell the Pinners. You told me about hitting up your old friends who never returned the wrestling shoes they borrowed from you so you could lace up and coach your son. This goes without saying. I know deep in my heart the entire York County wrestling community will be in his corner. Cody, I looked up to you. I envied you. I wanted nothing more than to retire together when our time at Northern Regional was complete. I'll miss your phone calls, and I'll miss telling my kids to cover their ears in the back seat while you talked over Bluetooth. I'm going to commit the rest of my career to you, as you will serve as an everlasting motivation. So, as you've just heard, these three personalities were so bold, yet so different from one another. The one obvious similarity is their commitment to law enforcement over a combined total of almost 60 years in police work. These two sets of shoes and one pair of cowboy boots will be incredibly tough to fill. But on behalf of all of us at the Northern York County Regional Police Department, we will strive forward to make Mark Baker, Isaiah Emenheiser, and Cody Becker proud. Thank you.